We all know that the right habits and mindsets can be transformational in how we live our lives. But among the sea of advice online, it can be challenging to know who to trust with these important life decisions. At The Standard, we answer those questions and introduce you to some of the most successful people in the world in their fields and the habits and the mindsets they've used to achieve their success. To learn more about our social platform, head on over to www.thestandardapp.com. And now, your host, myself, Chris Pallatroni. Welcome to another episode of The Standard. I am your host, Chris Pallatroni, and today's guest is Jeff Kallil. He is a serial entrepreneur running a variety of family businesses, but the reason I brought him on this show is because he is also a phenomenal coach, life coach, relationship coach, empathy, dealing in self-worth and self-love. This is a really cool guy. If you get a chance to watch this on YouTube, you'll just see it. He is incredibly easy to talk to. He's got a phenomenal presence about him, but if you're listening on Apple or Spotify or any other sort of pod show, you're just going to hear it in his voice. This guy is incredibly knowledgeable. On this particular episode, we cover a lot of ground. We talk about his best habit in nutrition and clean eating and how that's really supported his life. We talk about sleep and the value that that provides to him. We get into mindsets and talk about controlling things that we can control. He's got a beautiful message for sort of the ending question I like to ask on how we can nudge humanity in a more loving and kind direction. It was just a fun conversation. And I think you'll hear as he sort of walks you through his personal experience and the things that he's working on. This is a very relatable guy. And so without further ado, I welcome Jeff. Probably to start off, Jeff, what would be really helpful is, although I feel like I have a pretty good background on who you are, I recognize a lot of the listeners may not have as rich of a background as to your expertise. And you do so much. You've got a variety of family businesses. You've got this passion in coaching people. You've got your social media going. You've got your hands in a lot of different cookie jars. And I'd love you to, both for me, but also for the listeners, maybe just give us an overview of how this all came to be, and then especially what you're working on today would be really helpful.
Sure. So, long story short, I'm in family businesses. We have a branded house that has multiple brands under it. And from that standpoint, I never thought I'd be back in the family business, but here I am today. And the reason is when I was out in Chicago doing custom clothing for people all around the city, I had the option to either build a legacy with that company. But when we started talking about legacy, it was, well, I could do that with them, or I could build it with my family. And that's really what it came down to be, is I'd much rather leave a footprint for my family and with my family than with other people that I appreciate and love, but just that's a different relationship to me, right? So that's how I got back in the family business. But my passion for coaching came because of the other places that I was with. Being in door-to-door sales and having to work with people that are all over the board in different contexts and slamming the door in your face for different reasons, freaking hurts, man. It's like, I feel like I'm a good guy. I'm coming here to give you a great benefit, and I just got slam, slam, slam. And so I had to really start to work on my own brain, and everything that I was believing about myself at that standpoint wasn't helping me. So I had to do some rewiring. And with that rewiring, I was able to get myself to a place through the grace of God and a lot of other people that were coming to my aid. I always believe that people come out of the woodwork when we're doing work on ourselves. And I was able to then go to town and had a lot of success in that business. And from that platform onto moving into my coaching business that I have today, I took what I learned there and brought it to the family businesses. But what I found is people didn't appreciate that. People didn't appreciate my last name. People didn't appreciate where I came from. People didn't appreciate anything. And I didn't start in an executive position. I was working my way up. It's how our family works. You got to earn your stripes. And it didn't matter. So I went through a lot of very hard, and speaking with my therapist emotional abuse for 5 years. And it was exhausting and painful. And some of it was narcissistic abuse. And again, that's not Jeff diagnosis. That's from my therapist telling me what I had experienced and helping guide me through that process. But here's the deal. You can go to therapy and it's a beautiful thing, but you have to do the work. And so I had to go and figure out from this standpoint, how do I heal? How do I rebuild my self-worth? How do I rebuild my self-belief and confidence to become who I know I can be, but have kind of lost my way a little bit? And through that work, I'm like, okay, I have to share this because it's working for me. And so I started sharing it on social media, and I coupled that with my passion about building interpersonal relationships. And so that was spawned from that, which then led to the coaching program, which led me to be a much better leader at this organization that I'm at today, our family's business. And here we are, multiple different hands, multiple different pies, if you will. So many bouts of focus, Chris. Here and there, it's not as much one line focus, which we read so much about. I'm kind of a sprinter. So I focus here really intensely, and then I'll jump a lane, focus here really intensely, jump a lane, and then you move hopefully through that and see progress from that standpoint. So that's how where I'm at today.
What is the spectrum of family businesses that you guys run?
A large, actually. It's large and not large. They actually align on two things. Their purpose, and on top of that, their capabilities can play together. So we have two in the wholesale division, and that is a company called Design Inc., which is a greeting card and stationery company. And then we have a home decor and tabletop company that's also wholesale at the current juncture, which is called Tableau Inc. And then we have a print manufacturer that's a service-based business called Verdant. And then we have a wedding and corporate events venue called the High Five. It's located on the 5th floor downtown in our facility here. And so High Five, 5th floor. So people have corporate events that can get their materials for those events printed from us. They can send thank you cards from our stationery company and give gifts from our tabletop company. So shared purpose, different contexts. One can interact with one can interact with all four. And then the parent company, which is the 5th, is called Convivial Brands, which means to make life jovial, uplifting, making it better. And that's our mission, is to make life better. So,
well, I think that fits well into your coaching as well. I'm curious, when did you start the coaching stuff? Like, how far back was that?
I started coaching clients for free in the pandemic. So I wanted to test the waters then. I started paid coaching 2021. And then group coaching in 22. And that's where I'm at today.
What's the biggest surprise that you've encountered in coaching people, since it's somewhat new for you, but clearly a passion? What's been the biggest surprise so far?
It's kind of embarrassing saying this because I feel like I should have known. But the biggest surprise is that people love getting the energy from you as the coach, but they don't always love going and doing what they have to do after that. So it's like they've gotten motivated, and I'm like, I leave the call, I'm like, all right, you're on it, baby. Like, you got this. And I'm like, I'm fully expecting, Chris, that they're going to come back to me and have all these stories on their growth, and they don't. And that's been the biggest surprise for me. Is I would think it's like buying a book from Amazon. You buy the book, it makes you feel good because you like have an intention to read it. Not all people are like you, Chris, avid readers, but they want to be. Just like the people that I work with, they want to be where they want to go. They want to have that confidence and self-belief, but so much of what we want in this life, we're not willing to do the work to get. And I think that's been a big surprise for me. Here's my money, but I don't want to do anything with it.
Interesting. We're going to dive into you in a minute, but I think this is such a worthy topic to explore. I'm curious as to why aren't people willing to do the work? What do you think it is? Like, how do you think about the gap between I hate to use the word motivated because we all know that's not always what people need. But what do you think the gap is between I'll just sort of lump the inspiration, the motivation, the knowledge component to it, and then the execution? Like what do you think
Mm.
is preventing people from taking action in those positive ways?
I kept thinking as you were speaking, I kept thinking of like two things that we're just highlighting. One is fear, and and I'll extrapolate a hair on that. They know where they are today. It's safe. It may not be where they want to be, but they know it. So there's comfort. They know where they're at. They can look left and look right, know their surroundings. And the story is familiar. It's almost like when you watch a movie for the second time because you know what's going to happen, there's a little bit of comfort in there.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where I'm seeing a lot of the issues lie. It's fear that's masking as comfort. It's fear that they're not going to get to where they want to go, no matter how hard they try. So it's kind of a paradox. They're coming to me to help them grow in their self-belief. However, they don't believe in themselves enough to even start. And so that is really challenging in my initial calls with them. I have to get them to a point where they actually believe that this is possible if they go step by step. That's my like consultative call with them before they join. But the 90% of the reason people don't sign up is they don't believe enough in themselves that anything is going to get them to where they need to be. And it's sad. It's like, it breaks my heart. I mean, I get really disappointed, not in myself or in them. It's more disappointment that I can't help. It's like I'm reaching out and they don't want to grab my hand. You know, that's the thing that I think kind of pisses me off. But
Yeah.
that's the hardest part.
It's interesting the way you talk about that, because I think a lot about this. Like, I
Yeah,
don't coach many people one-on-one quite in the capacity that you do, although I still work for my previous company, and 30-ish people I chat with in a given week, if you will, and there's a lot of coaching involved, because
sure.
I'd always rather lean into the personal stuff than the professional. But
Yeah,
I'm always trying to think like there is a way, there's a recipe that will help any person anywhere, regardless of circumstance, get through to the other side. And I'm being a little
mm,
vague with the way that I describe that, but I do believe 100% that there is some concoction, if you will. And I'm always trying to think of what are the ingredients? Like what's it going to take for this person versus that person? Because yeah, like I mean, life is so precious, and I know not everybody feels that in the moment.
sure.
I totally get it. Like there's
Me
just
too.
wicked stuff that happens to all of us, and it's very hard to see past circumstance in some moments. But there's so many different quotacious ways to say it. You can go through it or you can grow through it, right? Life
Yeah,
doesn't happen
yeah,
to you; it happens for you. There's like all these different ways you can frame it.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like it's just a miracle we're even all here. And so it's like, how do you empower people to the extent that you're capable of, so that they can take advantage of the fact that you're here and gone in a blink of an eye? And that, I don't know if there's a recipe that will solve for all of humanity, but like that's like what gets me up in the morning. Like that's how I'm like, God, like it's almost like a mad scientist in some ways. Like, God, like if you figured this out and you could just templatize this across humanity, just imagine the possibilities. Imagine the ripple
Yeah.
effect of like
Oh
good
yeah.
people, happy people touching and inspiring other people. So like, I don't know, just I feel you with that. Like I'm always sort of like never disappointed at the person, but always just like, God, what more do I have to learn? How do I have to phrase stuff? Like,
Yeah.
maybe I'm
Yes.
a chef with the wrong ingredients. Like, I know it's out there. What is it?
Yes. 100%. It's so challenging, and it's yeah, your example of the chef with the wrong ingredients. I immediately thought of like beautiful piece of pizza. You know that pizza that's like really freaking good looking, but then tastes
Mhm.
like junk.
Yeah.
Like that. It's like it's kind of the opposite sometimes. It's so like the insides are beautiful, but this image that you have in your head is not allowing you to even taste it. And that's what I have to like repaint that picture for people over and over and over again. Some see it and some don't. So,
Yeah. What would you say your coaching expertise like falls on? Like I was trying to get a good grasp of it and looking at all your posts and your stuff. And like, I have an idea of where you lean in, but I'm curious to how you would describe it. Like, how would you describe your niche in coaching if you have one?
yeah, I almost want to know what your take is. Let's see.
Yeah, well, I'll give you my take first here, just so we don't
Yeah,
destroy it.
give me your.
What I was writing down is like, I mean, I was like communication and relationships, a lot about self worth, but there is elements of trauma here and
Mhm.
empathy and mindset. And I'm like, all right, well, that's just like we're just naming every coin term in wellness here. And so what I was really leaning into is like, you seem to have a little bit more of a lean towards helping women.
Mm,
It seemed if self worth, and I don't think you use the word a whole as much as I'll say is like self-love. Like how do you recalibrate those in a positive way for the individual so
mm.
that they can like maximize their life? So you didn't use all those words, but that was sort of like the way I was interpreting it.
It's very perceptive of you on all fronts. I'm surprised that see, I don't think this is what this the intention that I'm speaking to women it's not there, but it is happening. Like I think
Yeah.
it's my following is 75% female.
Hmm.
And I don't know why. I really don't. The one thing that I get complimented on, and it might be my approach, I'm more soft spoken than some of like the intensity that you would get from like Gary Vaynerchuk or Alex Hormozy or even like Ed Milet. But just to name some of like the really big names in the entrepreneurial slash self help space. So, but I can't figure that out.
Hmm.
My niche, if I were to describe it, would be really encircled on in order to have the most fulfilling life and interpersonal relationships in your life, it begins with self discovery and understanding yourself first. So I often coin when I speak with people is I help you with the relationship you have with others by first helping you with the relationship with yourself.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because when I started my content journey, that's what I'm really passionate about people. Kind of like how you were saying that you get to speak to so many different people around the world, like so cool. And that is what I love is connecting with people on in a deep sense on what they care about, what they believe in, what matters to them. And I recognized as I was going through this that the issues that people had with others stemmed because they were finding themselves in patterns of finding the same type of friends, same type of partners over and over again. And I mean, not to sound too harsh, but to kind of be real is if you're finding the issue, the common denominator is you. So
Yeah.
what are you doing that is attracting these types of people in your life? And so that's where that self-discovery piece has really kind of been a big passion of mine. And it's essential in my book if you're going to have a fulfilling relationship with any other person, whether it's a work colleague to a romantic life partner. So,
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I would 100%. I mean, you can't change the world. You can change yourself though. I mean,
yeah.
so cliche is to say, but it's like, I don't know. In all the stuff I've read and especially the spirit behind what I'm attempting to build at the standard is the focus on you. There's some other ingredients I think are pretty pertinent there, but yeah, I think when you do the work, if you really do the work, I think there are some conclusions that you will come to that are very universal. One of them being you're always doing the work. There ain't no I
You
did the
said
work
it, brother.
last week, it's done last year. I did that in my 20s. Like, I mean, let's
Mhm.
just be real. Like it is always and oh, you're always working on it. So I think that's one of those things that you'll come to realize. And it has different seasons, right? Like how you
Yeah.
feel in your 20s might be different than you feel in your 60s. So I think you have to leave some space for things are going to change. Like the world will change, you will change, your
Mhm.
relationship to it, your paradigms, all of that good stuff. I think the other thing that people will realize, and I think almost everybody would agree with this that's done any real meaningful work on themselves, is that you have to learn to forgive yourself to some extent. You have to learn to be not judgmental. You have to
Mm.
find a way to like just be more accepting of like, man, it doesn't always go the way we want it to go. Like whatever that may mean for you. And it can mean a variety of different things for different people. But I think when you start to realize like, shit, the work, you got to constantly work on it.
Yep.
It's constantly changing. And
Mhm.
there's this level of acceptance and non-judgmental that I have to have towards myself. Like I think when you start to really embrace those, you start to realize like, God, if this is hard for me, Jeff, how hard is it for you, man? Like, you know what I mean? And then
Every day.
you start to see other humans in a very different way. And I mean, this is how I look at the world. It's like you could pick any bad actor on the planet. And I do believe there's some bad actors, but it's just like, God, like it's gotta be hard for that person too. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, and so I think
Sure.
there's this level of empathy and just acceptance of like being a human's hard that
It
I think you
is.
start to like radiate out. And I think that really changes your relationship to just all people. Ah, that's my
You're
take.
right. No, I think you nailed it. I really do. It's a beautiful thing when somebody can, because there's one thing to have empathy and say, I understand. I'm seeking to understand how things are making you feel, and I'm going to choose to walk in your shoes. I feel like it's a whole other level of empathy to say, hey, you are on your solo journey. I'm on my solo journey. This journey is really hard for me. And knowing that you're a human means that it's also hard for you. And so we are on this adventure together. So it's like two solo journeys coming together as one. Like that's a whole other level of empathy. And I think you articulated that really beautifully. I actually have not thought of it in that exact way. It's really cool.
You know, I don't know why I'm thinking of this book, but if you want, like, I don't know. I think at one point I was trying to learn more about sort of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and
Mhm.
I wanted to take it to the next level. I read this book. I'm going to recommend it to you. Do what you want with it.
Ah,
It's called Spiral Dynamics,
okay.
and
I'm going to write it
uh,
down. Good.
yeah, it's Spiral Dynamics. I'm going to tell you the author here. It was just really interesting. I don't know, it just made me sort of think of it when as we're talking here. And so it's by, gotta forget the author's name here. What is it? It's by Don Edward Beck, and Christopher Cohen. What was really interesting about this, at least my big takeaway and why I found it so fascinating, is if you take this book at face value, it helped me recognize that not that your journey is exactly linear, but there are stages that we all have to go through to some extent. And the time we spend in each stage may vary by person to person, but I
Mhm.
can't rush you through your stage.
No,
I can't,
that
I
makes sense.
can't, I can't tell somebody who's dealing with anxiety, hey, you really should worry about climate change. That's way more important than
Mm,
your personal anxiety. Like
mhm.
we should focus on that, which I still think we should focus on that. It just made me realize that like you have to, as a coach, you have to find a way to meet people where they're at with
Mhm.
whatever is top of mind for them. And anyways, this book was one of those books I was like, it just helped me click as to like, God, you can't solve world problems by tackling the big problem. You have to tackle all the individual problems that people are facing and help them move through these stages if we want to get
Mm,
to a collective stage that we deem as really important. And I think climate change is a really prominent example where it's a really important issue of our time. However, it's also an issue a lot of people don't care about because they're facing other issues in their life that are more important to them as an individual at that moment. And I think it's important to just recognize that. So, anyway, spiral dynamics. Do what you want with that, but
I'm gonna read it actually. It sounds fascinating and right up my alley. And to your
yeah,
point, it just made me think of when we as human beings inherently like to solve problems. So we will find a problem to solve once a boulder is removed from our face. But what you just said, I think, is very pertinent in that a lot of people already have boulders the size of their face in front of their face. And so it's
Yeah.
like, how can I focus on this magnificent solve of climate change when I can't remove the boulder in front of my own face at the time? And that's kind of what I heard in
Oh yeah,
paraphrasing, which is really
it's
real.
spot on. Because to the individual, that is in a lot of ways the existential risk that they're facing. May not look that
Mm.
way from an outsider looking in, but if you've ever talked to somebody that has suicidal thoughts or has dealt
Mm-hmm.
with domestic violence or has
Mm-hmm.
dealt with obesity or I mean, pick an issue. I mean, and
Yeah,
when you hear them talk about it, they will talk about it like a climate scientist would talk about climate change. I mean, it is
you
that
said it.
real for them. And so I think it's just, it's one of the big takeaways that I had. But anyways, let's dive into you. So
Okay.
I am so curious. The backbone of the show is what is your best habit? What is your best mindset? So let's start with habit.
Mm.
What would you say at this point, Jeff, is the habit that is supporting your growth, your success, your mental health as an individual at this stage?
Ooh, at this stage,
This
I
stage,
love
yeah.
that. It narrows it for me. Thank you. I think at this stage, Chris, it's a little unique, but I have to say it's mm, the habit of making intentional decisions in what I put in my body, food wise.
Hmm.
I honestly think clean eating as a habit has been one of the biggest life changing experiences I have ever had in my entire years on this planet. I ended up in the hospital in April. I was 32 years old. I have a family of three with a small bowel obstruction. When a doctor walks in and says, hey, nothing to really worry about, but you have a 30% chance of death. Okay, yes, there's people that are going to the hospital at 75% chance, 80% chance. That's scary. But to even know that I have a percentage,
Yeah.
even if it was below 50 by 20 points, terrifying. And like, we just have to give you all the facts, right? So I'm like, okay, I got to make some serious changes. And what I found was when I really started digging into the food industry and also just like the types of meats I'm eating, the types of dairy I'm consuming, the types of or not consuming now, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, my mind started to clear up. I was ridden with morning depression. I dealt with it every day. I don't deal with it very often any longer. And if I do deal with it, it's usually Monday mornings, and it's not the Monday blues. It's different. If anyone's listening that's experienced morning depression, you'll know what I mean. It's like you wake up and you're like cloudy, you feel hopeless, you're exhausted. So like, yes, I'm coaching people, but I deal with this stuff too, right? And what I found is if I fast, and I do this every Monday for 36 hours, so
Hmm.
Monday till Tuesday around 9 to 10 a.m., I'm cloudy and depressed until maybe around 10:30, 11:30 a.m. And all of a sudden, my frontal cortex starts to buzz. I feel clear as day. And I feel superhuman. It's really weird, but I'm so clear on anything that I have to do. I have deep belief in what I'm going after in that week. And my mood regulates. I've dealt with ups and downs my whole life. I think it's part and parcel of maybe my ADHD and OCD tendencies, on top of working really hard and a lot to juggle. So I don't love that about myself. I constantly am working through that. But ever since I've been doing this once a week, 36-hour fast, my mood stays even keel. And it's really powerful. So that's been a really powerful habit for me, is watching what I eat to a really serious level, how it's processed, what's in it, every ingredient, removing sugar from my diet as much as possible. But then that 36-hour fast is as the linchpin to really catapult my mind.
Let me see if I can tease a little bit more out of you behind the why here. It sounded, based on the way you were describing it, that the catalyst for this clean eating was due to, I guess I would just say, like a health complication to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
But then as you were describing it, you were listing so many other benefits, from reduced depression, reduced anxiety, clarity, reduced brain fog. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure we could go on, and I could say sleeping probably improved, and
Oh,
like all
hands
that.
down.
So what, why are you, why do you do clean eating? I guess is like that. Like, was it just the health complication and that just was like the jump off to it? But like, why do this?
I think for me, the jump off is that I can either enjoy a flavor temporarily and be miserable for the next 12 to 15 hours, or I can really enjoy the clarity of mind and heart and soul and the peace that comes with it, to know that I'm taking care of my gut. And what I mean by that is, when I was sitting in the hospital and I was like contemplating all of this, I'm not going to lie, I had a little bit of a cheat sheet. And that is, my family has been ridden with autoimmune diseases to some extent. And my sister has a very serious one, diagnosed again at a very young age. And she was able to put her entire disease, she did some traditional medicine, so don't mistake this, but she was able to put her disease into complete remission within a year, through the grace of God and her hard work. And so you see that, and you see her skin clear up, and her demeanor change, and her happiness kind of skyrocket, just from what she's eating. She does not exercise. If you told her, my sister would be like, Jeff, if I could exercise like you do, but I eat like I do, be game over for everybody. And I'm like, I got to take some notes out of her book. So I'm sitting there at the hospital with a tube freaking up my nose. And I'm like, my sisters with autoimmune diseases are not in hospitals with a 30% chance of death. I am, and I'm supposed to be the healthy one in the family, right?
Yeah.
And so I think for me, it was, if that's happening for them and they're able to do that for themselves, I just want to make sure that nothing happens to my gut ever again. That's how it started. I never
Gotcha.
want something to like rupture in my stomach. I could have left the hospital with a bag. I could have left there with a bunch of surgeries, or a 30% of chance of not existing.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I don't want to ever put myself through that. And I never want to put my family through something like that again. The other stuff was a surprise. I had a feeling something would
Mm-hmm.
happen, didn't know exactly what. I didn't even know, Chris, that I had mood issues. I just thought I was kind of up and down, lack of sleep, tired. But that one change having that big of a difference, something's up.
Yeah.
And the
What,
fact that it lasts. Go ahead.
what does clean eating mean? Like, I think I can read into
Hmm.
that to some extent, but just to remove some of the ambiguity in it, what is clean eating for you?
So for me, I would be lying to you if I said I was like a straight up expert in that kind of work. But what I've come to call it for myself is looking at how things are being made in the United States. I mean, yes, we can go anywhere to get our food these days, but that's where 90% of our consumption comes from, right? And so the chemicals they use to round up the grains, the amount of things that's changed them through genetic modification, such as wheat. So I've been gluten free for 7 years, and that's because of serious issues. It's not because I like the freaking Kardashian said it, so I'm going to do it. It's because it actually made me completely change who I was.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't lose weight. I was 215 pounds when I left college. Couldn't lose weight. The second I started going on gluten free and I was working out the way I worked out, came right off. Don't even have to try. And that's just changing diet on top of exercise. So gluten free is clean to me because the way that wheat's processed in today's society, I can't digest it. Dairy, the same thing. Traditionally, dairy, if you drink it raw milk, which is ridden with real bacteria, which was very okay until 1989 when they decide to pasteurize it, which is extreme heating, and it destroyed the chemicals within inside the milk's compound. Now it changes the way people behave in it, and you've seen the lactose intolerance people skyrocket since the 80s. So people will say it's because of better testing, but it's a shame because there's direct correlation between the testing time periods getting better and the change in how people are creating our food. So dairy free. But here's the biggest kicker for me. I wouldn't say I'm dairy free. I would say I limit dairy. I still have good cheese every now and again. I can't fully give it up. But it's taking what the triangle of food is and limiting certain things instead of having it a part of your daily consumption. But here's the biggest one is sugar, specifically refined sugar.
Yeah.
Refined sugar has been known to completely cause brain inflammation. So to answer your question, clean eating to me is anything that doesn't inflame my gut and inflame my brain. And and sugar's been the biggest culprit of that. So I stay into like coconut sugars, maple syrup when I'm cooking and baking. Will I have a treat every now and again? Of course. But I can feel the difference, especially if I overconsume it. And so I'm trying always to regulate that and ensure that I'm not overconsuming refined sugar. It's the worst culprit.
Yeah, I think nutrition is such an interesting one. If we can linger on this for a moment, so many people I think would make the argument of like, man, it's just hard, Jeff. Like whether we're talking about people that don't have the financial resources to buy higher quality food, that's a real thing for a lot of people. Because God knows all the cheap stuff is not healthy for you, or at least most of it's not healthy for you and highly processed. There's also, I think, speaking for myself, but I think can be broadly accepted, is there's an intimidation factor of like, God, this just is a big category. Like, what do you mean reading labels and then like tracking down like where this food came from? What do you mean like what they put in there? Like, how do you find like, so, I think there's this almost like insurmountable mountain of like, oh my God, I don't have all this knowledge. What are maybe like 3 things that you've done that maybe you would recommend for somebody else to do if they wanted to move down a more clean path for their nutrition? What are some easy digestible things that they can do that would allow them to take advantage of some of the things that you've been able to take advantage of?
That's a great question. Okay. So something that's actually tangible that can get them started. I think the one thing is check your cupboards and see what has sugar in it. You can find counterparts to almost any condiment that doesn't have sugar, that doesn't hurt the taste, and not spend a ton of money. It might be 50 cents more comparatively to dollars and dollars more. I think that is one really big one that you could see a ton of change in. So, and that includes and here's something, you might be ended up saving money. Nix the coffee creamers and all the fruity drinks at Starbucks and just get black coffee. And then, that would help and it would save you money. So there's things like that would be a big deal. And then let's say we don't have the financial means or the know-how to go like, hey, I'm going to go hardcore gluten-free here. Because let's not lie, gluten-free can be more expensive. They've gotten a lot better over the last, since I've gone, so it's 7-8 years. However, my recommendation is try to limit it to special occasions. So instead of having, pizza 2 times a week, maybe have it once every other week. Or same, and then the same with dairy. I would just limit certain things that we have gotten used to being a part of our everyday consumption, and try to stick to as much protein as you can and as organic as possible. And you've seen organic and non-organic kind of hover in price by each other, and you'll see the big skyrocketing in price now is like grass-fed, regenerative farming, all that kind of range-free chickens, etc. So if you can stomach the dollar extra expense to get organic, that helps with meats, especially. And then the best is that grass-fed stuff, but it's expensive. I'm not going to lie. So I would say limit the intake, reduce the consumption of sugary drinks and foods that you find in the stores or at meals. And then look in your cabinet and replace your condiments or the things you cook with and try to make them sugar-free. That's what I
That's great
think.
advice. I'll bolt one or two things on top of that, just as basic habit framework. Just start small. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Amen.
if you want to eat clean or you want to exercise or whatever it is that you want to do, in this case, nutrition, there's no need to go buy a bunch of cookbooks and, you know, find a paleo cookbook and to like throw all your stuff out and to like change your grocery list. Like, you know, that can be completely overwhelming. I would say
Yes.
pick something, right? If it's, we won't drink, you know, soda in this house, or, you know, we'll cut dessert down to a Friday, Saturday thing, or we'll remove, you know, this type of pasta for, you know, there's some really good garbanzo bean pasta out there, believe it or not.
Yeah.
But like, there's just one thing, maybe two, that's easy for you to do. It's easy for you to deploy. It doesn't feel overwhelming. That's the bar. Set the bar so low you trip over it, as they say. And then like once you got that under wrap, just fold in another one and then fold in another one. And if you do that, you know, once a month for a year, which I know a year can sound like a long time, like you may have overhauled your entire diet and nutrition at that point. And so I think a lot of people just try to go right out the gate with changing everything. And it's like, what's one thing you can do now? And just
Yeah.
start there.
I love that. I'm It's a good addition, a necessary one. With you 100%,
Yeah.
Chris.
Yeah. So nutrition has made a major impact on you.
Yes.
Let's pivot over to mindset right now.
Okay.
And so sort of in a similar vein, is there a particular mindset that serves your mental health, maybe even your success? You do a lot right now, but is there one mindset that sort of rises above the rest that is helping you more than the rest of them?
One, it is understanding what I can and cannot control and trying to focus the most on what I can control and let go of the rest. I have a tendency, and this I think stems from my coaching side of my being, to want to help so deeply that I take on the problems of others. And all it does is exhaust and drain you. And I don't mean just like their physical problems, but everything that's affecting them, the outside circumstances that we can't win with. So I have to take a step back. This is intentional. I actually have to take a step back, take a little piece of paper, and I write things that are in my control right now. That's usually a much smaller list than the things outside. And the funny part is, I'm so results oriented. So this is where like a lot of my mental breakdowns happen. Is I'm like, I gotta hit this amount, this number by this day, and this many followers by this day, and oh my gosh, my engagement is down. Like it messes with you. I'm not gonna lie with you.
Yeah, there.
It's awful. But if I can control what I can control, I can't control the algorithm. I can't control if people say yes to purchase. I can't literally make them do it. Here's the nuance. I can influence it, but I can only influence it if I control what I can control, which is the quality of content I output, which is how alert and aware and impactful I am on a discovery call, which could be the right questions I ask, am I getting distracted or not? Am I taking time to write my content, or am I just spewing from the hip and hoping it sticks? So that is where I think keeps me sane to mindset, keeps me focused, and allows me to do more things when I'm deeper focused on only the things that are in my circle of influence, which is what I can control.
You know, so as I told you when we started this, I mean, I asked those two questions, mindset and habit, to everybody. And there's some themes that pop up, I get making a bed a lot as a habit and whatnot. But this is the first time somebody is like described a mindset in this particular way. And I'm glad you did, because I mean, let's just be honest, like this plagues humanity. Like,
Dude,
I think this has a universal application for so many people. So let me ask you a couple questions on it. Like, I guess one question I would have is, why did you say this one? Like, why now? Why is this particular mindset so important to you at this particular stage of your life?
it's a great question. I have not actually thought about that. Ha! Okay, but I have the answer.
All right.
The answer is this, Chris. I believe that this is really influencing me because I feel like I'm at a pivotal point. I'm at this place where I'm like not quite realizing everything that I believe is coming to fruition. We're doing a lot of change agent stuff at the business. That takes time and hard work and effort, and you don't just see the results overnight. I'm building this coaching platform, and you don't see thousands of people coming in to hear Jeff Kallil's coaching stuff overnight. I'm working on YouTube right now and building my content base. But after taking 14 weeks off after my spout in the hospital, you don't see results overnight. So I feel like I'm putting out so much effort and so much work, and you don't see the results on that. It's killing me. I'm not gonna lie, it's pissing me off so much. But when I take a step back, look at what I can control, you know what it's forcing me to do? My content game has to get better. My my discovery calls have to get better. The leading of my team members at our companies has to get better. So it's forcing continuous growth, but I only see it that way when I look at what I can control. Because otherwise, I'm looking at results aren't there, results aren't there, results aren't there, results aren't there. And I feel defeated. And I stay in the same spot, waiting for something to change. But if I just go check on that team member that seems a little down during this harder time, that's something I can control. That maybe that little bit of TLC helps them to feel good about what they're doing, which then obviously permeates to others, which then helps the business move forward. If I'm focusing on the person I'm speaking to deeply in a discovery call, they may still say no, but maybe they'll buy buy into the program in a couple months and be more bought in, and because of our first conversation, and we maintain a relationship and it's healthy and happy. But if I just write it off being like, oh, you're not ready, blah, 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 and I'm worried about the result, and I've lost a potential customer, client, and potential relationship dynamic friend. I mean, you become friends with the people you work with over years and years and years of time. Yeah. And then the last one is with the content game, is what you do and you can't control. You know what you do, Chris? You start comparing yourself to every single other person that's getting 1 million views on that, and they just jumped 1 million followers because they were on Lewis Howes' podcast. And like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like you're just judging yourself over every single thing that you're doing. And like, yeah, cool. They got some breaks, they got some hits, they got some wins, but I'm getting that too. It's just different. And it's a different world. Then my journey is different. And that's okay. And if I have a big pop on something and I get 1.5 million views on a YouTube video, that can change the scope. But if all I do is think about other people's success and that I'm not getting it, I guarantee you I'll stop making content because I'll be so defeated. And I guarantee you I won't hit that mark. So
well said.
That's where I'm at with that.
It was interesting when you were talking about that. So I don't think I've shared this on this podcast, but I love quotes. I mean, who doesn't love a good quote?
Big fan.
And I mean, I've got like just thousands of them memorized at this point. But, probably about 3 years ago, I was like, God, I was all these quotes I love. And I tried to distill down like my pillars of life down to a small subset of quotes. And so I literally I just had thousands running through my brain. So I literally compressed down to 21 quotes of I'll just live my life based on these.
That's
So,
cool.
I don't know why I did it, but I did it. And I just like lean on one of those quotes at any given time. And there was two that came up as you were talking about those. One was just trust yourself. Like I literally
Mm,
have that. I can see it right on my wall. It just says trust yourself. And
nice.
another one is fall in love with the process and the results will come. And it really is
Amen.
that like what can I control? And let me just focus my energy there. And I've always taken this to heart with the previous company I built or what I do. I'm like, yeah, do I want to sign a deal? Do I want a client? Do I want this? Of course, like we have desires, if you will, but like what I can get really good at is controlling the process. And another one that sort of fits in there is like, greatness is a lot of small things done well.
Mm,
And so it's just
hmm. That's
like
a great
you
one.
got to do just tons of little tiny things. And if you do those well, it can look like magic to the outsider, but it ain't
Yes.
magic. It's just like, yes, I do journal, and yes, I run a lot, and yes, I work out a lot, and I drink my water, and I stay hydrated, and I go to sleep on
Yeah.
time. It's like, if I
Yeah.
had to
Yeah.
stackpile all the things I did, you'd be like, you're a lunatic. But it's like, it allows me to operate at high efficiency. And the last thing I say, and then I got a question for you.
Yeah.
It's funny because my wife is she's actually a beauty influencer. Like I got no social presence. I'm just
No
starting this year in
kidding.
2023. But she is like, I mean, she was a phenomenal makeup artist, climbed the
Hmm.
corporate ladder, became a stay-at-home mom, and then rebuilt herself. And now she is just crushing it. I remember it took her 7 years to develop her Instagram. This is one platform she's on.
Wow.
7 years to get to 20,000. And then I think it was like August or something, she did this video, and she'll say it's not even a cool video. It's just like she just did this video, and somehow it went viral. Just somehow it like
Wow.
Jeff, it was crazy. Like this one video, and she went from this 19,000 followers to 110 in like 5 weeks. And it was
Unreal.
fascinating because it was like every day for the first like week was like 10,000 extra followers. And like she had worked 7 years to like get to this point. And I mean, she was gaining followers. Like
Isn't
it was
that
such a high
nuts?
number. It was just ching ching ching, and it was crazy. And we were just, and it was good to see all the work she had put in.
Yes.
Not that that was the ultimate payoff, but it was like a small reward for all that work she put in. Um,
Absolutely.
and then she's got like 110, and like she just blew up at this small little window. But it's interesting because then you hit that mile mark, and then it's like, well, how do I get to 500,000,
Of
or how do I get
course.
to? And it's just the
Yeah.
thing is like, well, just enjoy what you
Figuring it
have
out.
in the moment, right?
Yeah.
Don't compare, just enjoy. So my question for you is this: like, focusing on what you control and not on what you can't, I do think it has universal application. So the question is when you're in this moment and you're finding yourself oscillating in the wrong direction,
Mhm.
you're paying attention to the external environment, and maybe you're in a woe is me moment, which I'm sure happens. Like how do you recalibrate? Like what is the mechanisms you're using to go from like, that's not a healthy direction, Jeff, I need to go back here and focus on, like, what does that look like for
Mm,
you? I know you do some journaling, so maybe that's
I
part of
do.
it.
I
But
do.
what are the tools you're using to get back into this what can I control mindset?
Um, that's a great question, and I think I've recently figured that out. So it's not. It's
Okay.
you are correct, Chris. I'm an avid journaler, um, and it helps. But there's something that I've found that if I don't do this, nothing can help me enough. And you'll probably just be like, "Really, Jeff? Like, how boring." It's sleeping. It's
Hmm.
if I don't get enough sleep, and I was so tired of being like, "Oh, this person gets 5 hours and they're a super dope entrepreneur, so I should be able to do that." Comparing this tiny perspective to mine, I need 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Now I get
Yeah.
up at 5 a.m. to work out, and my kids don't wake up, and it's just like great. So am I great at that? Always? No. I usually am around 6.5 to 7. I can skate by. It's a little bit more challenging, but I also I just know that you have to take some time to figure out, okay, if my kids are up till 9, I'm not going to go to bed 5 minutes after. You know what I mean? It's just not realistic. So you have to live. But sleeping gets me back in the place. Like when I'm spiraling, it's when I know to put the pen down and go to bed.
Interesting.
And it's because I believe and I'm thinking about this more intentionally now, so thank you for the prompt, is we are limited in our willpower. I think you and I both know that. And so if we're limited in our willpower, and it takes willpower to intentionally sit out and articulate what you can and can't control and logically and rationally go through that without being emotional about it, I'm tapped out sometimes of all of my willpower, all the decision making I've had to do during the day. And so sometimes the best decision to make is the final decision, and that's close my eyes, read a book, and go to bed. Like I've been on this bender that in the midst of our hustle culture, and trust me, I work like a freaking dog. I love working, and I thank God for my wife, because if it wasn't for her, I'd probably work from sunrise to sunset because I actually enjoy it. The thing that I have been really on lately is that resting is just as much as a strength as working. And so, and I don't mean just like watching TV. I mean putting your phone down, taking a walk out in nature, not being with your children, being present with your children. When your daughter's dressing up like a princess, you act like the king and you're taking her to the ball. I mean, like being there in the moment with them. That's resting my mind to me. Now rest, and that's a big thing too that I work with my clients are. It's like, just because that's resting to me doesn't mean that's resting to you. Like there's universal respite practices, but everyone is fueled differently. And so it's back to that whole principle, Chris. It's if you don't understand yourself, you're never going to get to where you want to go. And so that's, I think, it for me: sleep and being present.
It's a good one. When you were saying the resting part, and it's totally true, there is a book, Peak, by Andre Erickson. It's on peak performance, and he uses athletes as the prime example throughout his book, violinists, whatnot. I had to read this book and understand some of the science to start to apply it in my life of, yeah, we live in a hustle culture, especially in the US here, of, well, if I sleep less and I work more, how would I not get ahead? I mean, come on, who hasn't listened to Kobe Bryant or, like listen to the Jeff Bezos story or something? However, the argument that he makes in the book, and he brings in the science to support it, is the fact that it's stress, healthy stress, right? It's the bend not break, it's the stretch not snap, it's the slightly out of your skill set and capabilities, but not too far off that you get motivated. So it's sort of a flow state of stress, if you will, but it's that stress plus the rest. And the rest isn't just defined as sleep or a nap, but it's a certain type of rest that gets your brain in the right activity. You mentioned a few right there. It could be journaling. It might be a walk in nature, but it's a certain amount of rest that allows you to recharge. And no, watching Netflix is not the rest he's referring to for all you Netflix people out there. But the point is like, it's the combination of those two. And so if you're the type that, on the stress side of things, treats yourself like a Formula One race car, then you have to apply that same ideology to the rest side and treat yourself like a Formula One race car of like, okay, well, how do I maximize my rest? Because it's the two of those that allows you to grow as an individual. And it's just hard because, I mean, let's be honest, even if you get the science, it's like, oh, God, I can't take a month off. I can't not work my weekends. I can't, like, how do you get ahead in life?
Literally.
But no, it's a good book. It's a good science book. And yeah, there's a lot.
I wrote it down. Peak performance.
Yeah, you've got a lot of books to read. Well, it's called Peak. It's called Peak. Well, maybe it's called Peak. Let's see, what has it got? Like Andrew Erickson here. It's been a while since I've read it. Yeah, it's called Peak: The Secrets from the New Science of Expertise. Andres Erickson and Robert Poole. Yeah, good book.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think you'd like that. All right, Jeff. Final question I got for you here is, and I love this question because I'm so focused on the really, really macro picture. How do we make the world a more loving and kind place? Like, what does that what does that actually mean? And so the question is like, if you could wave a wand and distill some sort of habit or mindset, and all of humanity got that habit or mindset,
Mm.
What habit or mindset do you believe would nudge us in a more loving and kind direction? What do you
Ability to
think it would?
let go. The ability to let go. I think that would allow so many people just to be, and okay, so you struck a chord with me when you said that. And kindness is an output. And so what is missing inside? And what I find is that what's missing tends to be the ability to becoming some sort of healing presence. We all heard the phrase, hurt people, which then can then go on we can assume that healed people heal others. And so how do we become healed? Like, what is healed? And so I often look at, and I'm breaking this down intentionally. So then I look at, okay, what isn't healing? What destroys your inside? Again, kindness is an output. So holding on to terrible trauma, holding on to people that have done you wrong, not traumatic things, but maybe a betrayal, like a friendship betrayal, romantic betrayal, unfairness, and needing everything to be fair in the world, having to control everything. These are all things that deteriorate our insides, and so our external response is abysmal. And so I really feel that the ability to let go, and this is so much easier said, of course, but letting go of trauma, things that alter your brain. I mean, but finding a way. I'm waving a magic wand, right? Finding a way to be able to let go of those things. Letting go of past betrayals and saying, hey, this wasn't right, but I'm letting go of that. I'm not saying that I have to go and surround myself with you and that what you did was correct. Those are not synonymous. I'm letting go and I'm moving forward. You can't live your life being dragged down by a 50-pound weight. You will wear out and tire, and become irritable and angry. And here's the kicker. We have a word for that, but it triggers people. It's forgiveness. Forgiveness is, to the nth degree, if you peel back all of the things that people say it is, it literally means to put behind. It's a Greek word. And if you can let go and put something behind you, it doesn't say that you have to surround yourself with them. It doesn't say that what they did was correct. It doesn't say that everything is going to be perfect. It says that you are choosing to let go of something and move forward. And if I could wish upon this world anything, it'd be the ability to forgive themselves, forgive others, and to humbly ask for forgiveness. Even if they don't need to say it to them. Write them a letter, let it go into the world. But don't hold on to things that drag you in that 50-pound weight, because eventually it will catch up to you and destroy the good things that you do have going in your life, because you're bogged down by everything else that isn't right. And dang, I didn't expect to get so impassioned by that, but that's it for me. Finding a way to let go.
That's a great one. That's actually, just let it go is one of my 21 quotes on my wall. Yeah, there's a.
Oh,
I'm not going to give you any more book. I'm not going to give you any more book recommendations, but there's a great one for that as well. But yeah, no, it's so true, and it's not just for the reasons you mentioned for humanity, but my God, the effects of that stress and trauma that it has on you and your thoughts. And let's be honest, like, thoughts have physiological responses in your body. They regress
100%.
genes, they create sicknesses, they chip away at your longevity. Like, it is, I mean, we are just starting to unravel like how the way you think can impact your life. Like, it is so fascinating. So I'm like, good, like, yes, eating is important and exercise is important and sleeping is important. Those are probably three big pillars, but you've got to find a way, whatever that way may be. Maybe it's letting go, maybe it's tapping into happiness, but you've got to find a way to like remove the stress and the pressure in your life. Because like that has like such a negative effect, and it literally just kills you. So I love that, letting it go. That's a good one. Where can people go to learn a little bit more about you, Jeff?
So my best spot right now would be my social media platforms, which is just my name, at Jeff, Kallil. And I'm all over every platform, I think, aside from Snapchat. So that's where I'm at these days. And you can find my web links on my social platforms.
Cool. Yeah. We'll include that all in the show notes. Jeff, amazing. Better than I thought it was going to be.
It's a good thing.
Phenomenal wisdom here. So yeah, thanks for being a guest. I really do appreciate it.
Oh, it was awesome being here. Thanks for including me, Chris. It was really fun.
Thank you for listening to another episode of The Standard. Before we go, click on the link in the show notes of this episode to learn more about today's guest. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with somebody who you think would benefit from it as well.